Every farm has a story. When it comes to dairy farming, these stories are often only heard by the animals raised, the land stewarded, and the family that makes it all possible. Join me, Dairy Gal Val, as I interview individuals from across the dairy industry, both within the United States and across the globe, discussing topics like farm management, the food industry, ag business and technology, and most importantly, their farm story. This is the Dairy Hour Podcast. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Dairy Hour. I am your host, Val Levine, and I'm here with Brittany Nickerson Thurlow. She is a dairy farmer in the great Sunshine State of Florida. Welcome, Brittany. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. It's exciting to have someone that I'm acquainted with through a couple different national organizations to be my first interview. So I'm really, really excited to interview you today. So I want to start off, if you want to just share with the audience a little bit about yourself, your farm, what your role in the farm is, and things like that.
Absolutely. So, like you said, my name is Brittany Nickerson Thurlow. I am a Florida dairy farmer. I'm a fifth generation dairy farmer, a third generation Florida dairy farmer. My grandfather moved down from New York in the 50s when he was about 14, down to the same city that we live in now, and our family's been dairying here ever since. I'm a mom and a wife. My husband's name is Jeremy, and he's wonderful. He puts up with me anyway. And I have two kids. My son's name is Hickson. He's 10. My daughter's name is Stella. She is 6. Our family farm is called Nickerson Cattle Company. The dairy is 10-mile grade dairy. So we have the dairy and then we have a small beef cattle operation. The dairy is a large scale pasture based dairy. So it's a pretty unique location. We milk a couple thousand cows twice a day, all Holsteins. Our model is, it was my grandfather's mantra, was keep it simple. So our farm is very simplistic. It's very much like folks milk cows back in the 50s when grandpa came down. Our cows are on pasture most of the day. They come into the barn. We feed in the parlor. And then depending on the time of year and where they're at in their lactation, they get supplemental feeding in our feedlot. And then they go back out to the pastures. Cows are in the barn for about 4 hours a day. They're out in the pasture for about 20 hours a day. So while they're out there harvesting their own forage, they're spreading their own fertilizer. They cool themselves in cooling ponds, which is pretty unique to Florida down here. We use a subtropical grass called stargrass. It thrives in the heat and the moisture. So this time of year, we're very seasonal. So as the heat increases, our cows start to go towards their dry period. We really leverage that pasture out in that grass out in our pastures. So those two things align, and when the heat starts, the milk starts to dry up, our grass is growing like crazy. So that's when our cows are able to get the most out of it. We supplement with hay during our dormant grass season, typically around our cooling ponds. We still bull breed the good old fashioned way. We let those boys do the work for us. Trying to think what else. We've got about 20 employees. My manager has been with us for over 25 years. He's a great guy. We're very lucky to have him. All Hispanic labor down here. What am I missing?
That's really funny because we up in New York, we have a very similar motto of keeping things simple. And actually, we're still one of the few around that bull breed as well. So as I'm listening to you describe your farm, I'm sitting here going, oh, yeah, we're very similar. And I guess that all the times that I've ran into you, I've never realized the similarities between our operations. So that's really cool. What is your day-to-day job as far as the farm goes?
I have a few jobs on the farm. So the farm is owned and managed by myself, my dad, and my brother. My dad is semi-retired, so my brother and I carry most of the load on the farm. And then, of course, our manager plays a very important role there. I am personally in charge of all of our accounting. I do all of our bookwork. We utilize an accountant for taxes and those types of things, but I do all of our monthly reporting. I also do all of our payroll and our HR. So I'm writing a weekly payroll. I'm not always hiring guys. I'm always the one who ends up having to fire them. I don't know how that works.
I end up in the same boat. I'm not really sure why we get the short end of the stick.
Yep. But, typical new hire paperwork, all of our new hire training. I do all of our farm audit documentation. I do all of our environmental record keeping. down here in Florida, we're pretty heavily regulated from an environmental standpoint. So there's a lot of record keeping and data management that we have to do from that standpoint. I'm the point person between our nutritionist and our feed mill. So we meet with our nutritionist at least once a month. We send off grass and hay samples once a month, and then he balances our ration according to the nutrition profile of those forages. I also am in charge of our milk quality and our parlor procedures. So I'm constantly keeping track of, where we're at from a milk quality standpoint and making sure that our people in the parlor are trained properly so that we can keep that quality there. And, all the other little things in between. Co-op relations, that's me. Community relations, that's me. Family activity planning, that's us.
And
So,
you're a mom of two on top of that and a wife. So
oh
I
yeah,
guess that's even some more hats. And I definitely share that similarity with you, as in you're just doing whatever needs to be done and running from thing to thing and keeping the kids where they need to be and doing all
that's
of the
right.
things. So
The
I
hamster
have
wheel.
to ask, are you on the Gulf side of Florida or the ocean side?
I'm actually pretty much dead center, right center of the state from latitude and longitude. If you're familiar with the largest milk shed that's in Florida, which is Okeechobee County, I'm about an hour and 15 minutes west of Okeechobee.
All right. So are you one of the most southern dairies, or is there a lot of dairies south of you? How does that work?
I'm one of the more southern ones. Yeah, Okeechobee and I are kind of about on the same level. There's one farm that is the southernmost dairy in the United States. It's Graham Farm. I actually visited there recently. It is beautiful. If you ever get the opportunity, go. It's super well managed. It's a really great farm. But yeah, we're down here. We're down here where it's nice and hot and muggy.
And surrounded by gators, or do you not run into what is your gator? What do you have to do to manage the gators, especially the cows being out on pasture? Is there anything special? I know that that's something, when you think of Florida, you think of Florida gators. So
Yep.
what kind of things do you have to do when farming surrounded by gators?
Gators are a part of life down here. They're not threatening. They're unless they're fed or provoked, you really don't have to worry about them. On our waterways around here, typically whenever you hear that there's been some kind of an accident or attack or something like that, usually it's where people are feeding them or they're provoking them. So on the farm, we really don't have to have any problems with them in regard to our livestock, where they're always in our ditches. They don't hang out in the cooling ponds very often just because there's a lot of activity in there. They'll be on the roadways. I've had one take a nap in front of my office door. It's just you got to kind of nudge them along and let them go. So yeah, they're around, but they're not really a problem.
You're braver than I am. I think I'd be holed up in the office until it was gone, and I'd be peeking out going, "Oh no."
Oh, I'm not flirting with them by any means, but they're not as scary as they look.
Well, that's always good to hear. I guess this is
Yeah,
still a general caution. Don't go petting the gators, but
yeah,
they
no,
can be,
and don't feed them.
you can live with them, just stay away. Keep your
Yep,
space.
that's right. That's
Very
right.
good. So, do you want to use, you said you grew up on the farm. Do you want to talk about like what shaped your childhood to make you want to come back to the farm? Are you an only child? I'm not sure if you covered that or not. Just some really neat things about growing up in Florida on the farm.
Sure. So I did grow up on a farm, and I did a testimony recently, and I said to the panel that usually whenever you have farm kids, you have two different buckets. You have the ones that are hardcore farm kid, love it from day one. I'm gonna do what dad and grandpa did, and no matter what, I'm gonna be a farmer. And then you got the ones over here that are like, get me out of here. I don't want to be a farmer. That was me. Growing up, I was around them, and we had horses and we showed cows and did all of those things. I'm a country person by all means, but I just really didn't connect with farming like it was something that I wanted to do. I had big ideas and dreams and wanted to go do all the things and see all the stuff. So when I graduated from high school, I went to college. I ended up with a bachelor's degree from the University of South Florida in Tampa. And then I started working in the corporate world. I subsequently got a master's degree as well, and I worked in downtown Tampa for about 8 years in total. But about 3 or 4 years into it, I gave birth to our son, and he had some health challenges whenever we had him. And we were the only folks over there in Tampa from a family standpoint. So my husband and I made the decision that we were going to move back closer to home. Subsequently, or coincidentally, at the same time, the house right down the road from the farm that I grew up on came up for sale. So
Funny how
we,
those things happen.
oh, it's crazy, right? So we bought that place and I commuted back and forth from Tampa for a few years. And so then in 2016, I had my daughter. And about that time, our family was going through some planning. What I didn't mention is even though I was working in corporate America and even though I went to college in Tampa, I always stayed connected to the farm through bookwork. So my mom and my aunt were the primary folks in the office then, and my cousin and I would help them, kind of like administrative assistant roles. So I would come home every weekend, or I'd come home one afternoon a week and do some book work for a few hours and then go back. So I never really left, even though that really wasn't what I had planned for myself. But in 2016, we had all grown and we were all back close to the farm, and my grandfather was aging. And we just kind of decided that, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're all going to work on the farm and we got to figure out how to make it work. My dad's famous saying was, and at that time, my dad and my uncle were partners. It started with my grandfather. My dad and my uncle came in, my grandfather retired, dad and uncle were partners. And so when our generation came in, my dad's famous saying was, we can't have cousins telling cousins what to do without having a fist fight at some point.
Well, I
So
like the
it
way
was,
your dad thinks.
yeah, he's something. I'll tell you what, he's right a lot. It just hurts to admit it.
I
Uh,
completely agree with you.
So in our succession planning or family planning, we decided, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take the partnership between my dad and my uncle and split it. And the most equitable way to do that was based on cow numbers. And so at that time, they had 4 farms. They had the large farm, a medium-sized farm, and 2 smaller farms. So when you took the large farm and the 3 smaller farms, that was about the same cow numbers. So we split that business entity into two. My uncle and my cousins now run the 3 farm entity, and my brother and my dad and I run the 1 farm entity. So once that we got the plan in place, I retired from my corporate America job on May 19th of 2017. Still remember it.
You
I
retired at
worked,
the ripe age of.
I don't even know how old I was then. Ollie, 31,
See,
2, something like that. Yeah.
nice to retire from corporate America in your early 30s, right?
Well, I got the short end of the stick there. This is way worse than corporate America. That was a 9 to 5 job. This is 24 hours.
That is true, but I bet you
Mhm.
wouldn't trade it for the world now.
No, yeah, most days I wouldn't. So, anyways, we that's how we kind of went about our path to where we are now. So now that I'm back on the farm, I've just been learning a lot. I can run books all day long, but for me, milk quality and herd management and cattle nutrition, that was like, speaking Portuguese to me. So that's what I've really been spending the last 6 or 7 years doing is learning all of that stuff in addition to becoming involved in the co-op, becoming involved in the industry through different organizations. So I still feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose, even though we've been here for quite some time.
Now, what different organizations have you been a part of? What unique opportunities have presented themselves over the last few years of being involved?
Sure. I work very closely with our co-op. We are a member of Southeast Milk. That's our co-op. So I first started going to our board of directors meetings just to kind of learn. Then became elected to the board of directors a few years ago, and last year I was seated as the first vice president for the co-op. So I'm very
Congratulations.
Thanks. So I'm very involved in our cooperative and making sure that we're running a good business for our farmers and make sure that we have a good milk market for all of us to continue to ship to. So co-op, I'm very involved there on the board. I'm also on several committees. I chair the governance committee and our transportation committee. So, and then as the vice president, I also sit on the executive committee. So part-time job on the co-op on top of it, but it's very well spent. I also sit on the board for DCMA, which is a pricing agency down here in the Southeast. I think it's Dairy Cooperative Marketing Association. is the acronym. So us and I believe 9 other co-ops, or maybe it's 9 total in the Southeast, make up that agency so that we can, establish premiums and have a good stable market. I'm also involved in an NPF. I'm not a board member, but I've participated in their YC program as well as the Dairy Voice Network.
Which is where I've run into you multiple times, which was awesome to actually get to meet you in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise. Those guys do a great job in putting together good content for us and teaching us how to do things like what we're doing now, to be able to talk about our industry and about ourselves and do so in a well educated manner, right?
Definitely. I
Um,
definitely agree with the value out of that program is really, really something special.
yep, yep. And I'm active with our local promotion group here too. I don't sit on the board or anything, but I love having folks out to the farm. So I've had a few pretty cool opportunities through Florida Dairy Farmers, which is our promotion group down here. We've had NFL players on the farm. We've had, lots of farm tours with kiddos and those kinds of things. And that's really a real passion of mine, is to have people out to the farm and to share with them.
We also share that passion too. Definitely educating the public and getting to, let people experience the farming way of life is really something exciting and special to be able to do as a farmer and show people where their food comes from.
Yep.
Now, so you ship to Southeast Mill.
Mhm.
What is your primary product? Is that a co-op that just sells milk to other processors? Do they process milk? What does your milk specifically go for?
Great question. So down here in Florida, that's one of the unique things about our market is we have a very high class one utilization. Class one is beverage or drinking milk. We don't have very much manufacturing into cheese or butter. We have some small plants, but typically 75 to 80% of our milk in this federal order is used for class one milk. So there are several different processors in our area it's mostly white gallon jug milk.
Good old fashioned milk.
Yep, that's right. The good stuff.
Yes, definitely. And your husband, you've mentioned him once or twice, and I think you described his tolerance of you about the same as my husband would describe his tolerance of me. Now, I know that he has a pretty unique story himself. So I don't know
Mhm.
if you want to share a little bit about the interesting story. And this is also something that is somewhat similar in our pasts that is
Well,
entertaining.
I can't remember which part you're talking about, but he's a pretty unique character, so I'll give you his full rundown. My husband's name is Jeremy. When I met him in college, he was actually an MMA trainer and then ended up fighting professionally in a couple of professional MMA fights.
And let it be
Um,
known, my husband, not an MMA fighter. That is not one of the similarities that they do share.
Right, not which one that was, but I think I got you now. So when we got married, he was training MMA fighters. He had his own gym and was doing like a mix of MMA and CrossFit and that kind of a thing. When we moved back to my hometown, we sold the gym and he did some stuff. He started manufacturing CrossFit equipment, all of the big racks and rigs and stuff that those guys use in those gyms. And then, those welding skills, they're really useful when you have a dairy farm that has a bunch of stuff that breaks all the time. So I slowly sucked him into the vortex of the dairy, and he is now, for the most part, working out at the farm as a subcontractor. He's excellent. He does everything from electrical to welding to, just something broke. Can you please help fix it? Whether it's a feed motor or whatever. So he's invaluable in that regard. And we have a really great relationship because we can kind of strategize from his standpoint of fixing something and my standpoint of, okay, well, how is this going to impact the herd or milk quality or, what our plans are going forward. So I appreciate that a lot. But I think what you're talking about is his addiction to fishing.
That
Uh,
could be one of them. Mine's a hunter, more or
yep.
less, but he does like to fish when he gets spare time, which is unfortunately not often.
Yep, same with him. He used to be much more avid fisherman, and then, like I said, that dairy vortex will get you. So he's an avid fisherman. He really likes to fish the waterway that is closest to us is the Peace River. It's a beautiful, smaller Florida waterway. It's got a lot of really cool species of fish in there, but snook and tarpon are definitely the breadwinners there.
Yeah, and it's just cool that he's back at the farm with you same as my husband, did not grow up on a farm, but now is a full-time farmer pretty much. So
Yep,
it's funny
that's
how
right.
us ladies suck them in and get them to the farming dark side.
That's right.
So
Wouldn't
I
have it
just,
any other way.
yeah, did he know how to do like welding and electrical, or is that kind of self-taught, or did he go to college for that? How did he end up being a
No,
Mr.
it's
Fix
all
It?
self-taught. All self-taught. He's a YouTube is a amazing thing, especially these days. But he's the type of guy that when there's a problem, he's going to study or learn to make sure that he fixes it and fixes it correctly.
You said that you also have a beef operation as well under the farm. What is your beef operation? Are you selling direct to consumer? Are you selling them outright? How are you going about doing that?
Good question. So our beef operation is actually a little bit unique. So like I said when I was describing our dairy and kind of how our seasonality works here, our beef program is complementary to the dairy in that when we have cows that are in our far off pastures, which is our dry cow pastures. So as those dry cows become springers, they get ready to come back into the milking herd. They leave those pastures, they come back to the dairy, which is a little further away from their dry cow pastures. And then we have all this excess grass out here that we fertilized that, was serving us well for the dairy cows. And so a few years ago, my dad came up with the harebrained scheme that we would start buying thin beef cows off the market and bring those to the dairy and put them on that excess grass. And we keep them for however many days, just kind of depending on growth rate and weather and beef. And so we would fatten those cows up. We put some bulls in there. So we put some Angus bulls in there with those cows. Then, so typically we're buying cows October, November, beginning of December. We put them out there and let them graze until usually end of March, beginning of April. And then we'll have a veterinarian come out and we'll go through the cows. We'll kind of sort through and grade the cows. So the ones that, have just put on some weight, but they've got age on them, we'll sort those into one group. And then the group of cows that are still of a good condition, good age, that could be someone's replacement cow, we'll go through all of them and preg check them. So the vet preg checks them. And then depending on how many months bred they are, we have a system of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6+ months bred. We'll tag them appropriately. They got an ear tag with their number on it. And then we'll keep those two herds separate. So we'll put the cows that didn't grade, so the weigh cows, into one area, and that's one herd. And then all of the cows that are bred into another. And then that creates a really good opportunity for these smaller ranchers or even folks who just need a couple house cows for their pasture to get greenbelt tax exemption on their land. They can come and get those cows knowing that that cow is bred, how many months bred she is. That's if they want to try and have calves within a certain window and get their replacement cows that way. So it's been a unique little marketing experience or experiment that we did. It works really well because it's not a ton of input for us, but we're able to utilize the infrastructure that we already have between our cow pens and our pasture, our feeding system out there for the dry cow area, and create, kind of a second chance for some of those cows, but also maximize the value of the other cows that, may just have run out of grass, or maybe they're, whatever the situation was that got them to that poor body condition. We can build them back up and make them a better carcass for the beef market.
Very good. So if you're selling anything, it's just going back into the marketplace. You're not doing any direct to consumer beef sales or anything like that. And you guys try to focus more on just the cow calf side of things and like helping out those other beef producers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
That is
Anything
really
that we sell. Yeah, it is unique. So anything that we sell that goes to the market goes through the exact same market that we purchased the cow through. So everything's on the hoof. They can decide whatever they want to do with that and process it wherever she ends up.
And you said how many beef cows do you run at a time usually?
Well, it depends on how much money we have, and it depends on how good the grass looks. There's a few components. We've run as small as 200 head. We've gotten upwards over 500 head. This year, we're right about 400 head.
That's definitely enough, especially when you have a couple thousand dairy cows as well. And I don't know, did you mention earlier, are you raising all your own calves and heifers
No,
for the dairy? Okay.
Now, we have found down here in Florida that well, it's very costly to feed any animals down here. That's another unique thing to Florida is that based on either real estate use, real estate's very valuable down here. We are overpopulated. So real estate values are a little more inflated than up in like the grain belt. So for us to grow our own grain down here, it really doesn't make a ton of economical sense, not to mention some of the weather implications that we have to deal with and the terrible soil that we have down here. So all of our grain has to be imported. So we have found here in Florida for most dairymen that either it's really difficult to raise your own animals on your dairy from a labor standpoint or from that feed standpoint. And it doesn't make a lot of sense from a cost standpoint. So there are some dairymen who will raise their replacements to weaning age down here and then send them north until they can come back as a springer or, close up heifer. And then some of them, like our farm, we sell calves at birth, and they go to a calf grower that has a facility that's specifically designed for taking care of those calves. So we've got a grower that comes and picks up, and he takes them. They do have a process that they go through where they get all the colostrum that they need, they get all the vaccinations and everything that they need there, and then they're sent wherever. So we get all of our replacement animals, though not from that same broker. So the chain of ownership, we no longer own that calf as of when the grower picks it up. And then we will procure usually a springing heifer from the Tennessee, Kentucky kind of area. We've got a few different growers that we work with up there. And we bring them down usually in August or September, right before our calving season starts.
That's definitely a unique thing about Florida. And it's definitely one of those things that you don't think of being from somewheres where, we have cropland and grain accessible up here in New York. So definitely something that you don't think of as far as challenges that people that farm in Florida have. What are some neat facts about Florida that you would like everyone to know?
Oh boy. Well, let's talk about hurricane season.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah, hurricane season is something that is unique that we have to deal with down here. For the most part, usually we will have hurricanes, but they're not, year after year after year after year. We don't typically have big storms every single year. But for us, it's a big piece of, just planning, right? So anytime during that hurricane window, we have a checklist that we have to go through both from the co-op side and from the farm side of, okay, we need to make sure that we've got our generators serviced. We need to make sure that we've got diesel lined up. We've got to make sure that our employees have a plan, all of the stuff. So that's something that at the beginning of the season, which is right about now, June 1st, we're all kind of getting back into that mindset of, okay, it could be storm season here soon. Let's make sure we've got the big things checked. And then in the instance that we have a storm coming for us, then we'll go down kind of the micro list. So, but if a storm comes, that's usually something that will prompt, like I said, that second set of checklists. We always need to make sure we've got the generators ready. We've got all of the gas and diesel tanks filled up. We got feed tanks filled up just in case feed trucks can't make it to us just quick enough. We've got all of our milk picked up. Our employees have a plan. And then from the plant side, that's a big piece of our balancing during that season, because if a storm's going to come and it's projected to go towards a plant, well, that plant's going to close, which means now we have to plan, what do we do with that milk supply? Because not everybody's going to stop milking cows. That doesn't stop, but the plant's closed. So it's just a kind of a different set of circumstances that we have to plan around. I will take hurricane season over snow season all day though, because like I said, we only get those every few years. You guys deal with that stuff every year, and I'm good. No thanks.
Honestly, I think I'll keep the snow over hurricane season. So hurricanes scare me. Snow you can shovel out from underneath and call it good, but hurricanes, you're kind of stuck in them.
Yeah, this last one got our farm pretty good. Hurricane Ian, the eye actually came about 3 miles south of our farm. So that was a new thing. The last real big one that hit us was in 2004. I was a senior in high school. So, I didn't really realize the gravity of everything that was going on around me. I was just kind of bummed that I had to pick up shingles and, didn't get to go to school with my friends. But being a dairy owner and having that kind of a direct hit this past year, pretty eye-opening. It was a very scary storm. So I am hopeful that we do not have to deal with another one of those for quite some time.
Definitely hoping that for you too. I know I was chatting with you a little bit right after it happened, worried about knowing that you were right down there. And I'm happy that it wasn't any worse than it was for you guys. So I really appreciate that. So we're just about ready to wrap up. I'm going to end with a few fun rapid fire questions because that's a great way to get to know people, in my opinion. So when I vacation in Florida, which my grandparents live down there, we're visiting at least once a year as a family. My favorite thing to do, and one of the things I have to do in Florida, because we don't have them in New York, is we go to Culver's, because Culver's is, in my opinion, the best fast food chain ever. So how far are you from a Culver's?
At least an hour. I live in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So it's not a super frequent stop of mine, unfortunately.
Oh, no. So have you been there though? What's your go-to?
I think I've only been once because it's kind of a new chain down here, down south. I don't know if it was up north a little bit more frequently, but I think I'm kind of a plain Jane. I'm not anything fancy, like a regular cheeseburger and fries and a water, maybe a chocolate milkshake. I'm not any.
Have you tried out their cheese curds?
I have not.
Oh, you're missing out. You need to make the hour drive just to get the cheese curds. Definitely
I'll
do it up.
Right.
So as a Floridian, and that's one of my favorite vacation places. So what's your favorite vacation place?
What's a vacation? No, I'm just kidding. Once again, I'm kind of a plain Jane. I don't really like to leave my house. I like to be home with my cows and my chickens and all the things. But probably what we do the most down here is there's a neighboring town that's got a bunch of lakes, and my mom has a house over there. So we'll go over there to the lake house. That's actually where my kids are right now. Thank goodness for grandmas. So that's
you were saying they just got out of school yesterday, right?
Yes. Yeah. So anybody looking to babysit kids, call me.
They shipped them out quick.
Yeah, I know, right? Those teachers, what the heck? What do they think? They deserve a vacation? I don't get it.
If you could visit any place in the world, I know you like to be home, but if you were feeling adventurous, where would you go?
I would really love to go to New Zealand and see some of the grazing dairies down there. That would be typical dairyman. If I'm going to go on vacation, I want to go to another farm. Like, what is wrong with us?
You sound like my dad. Jeez.
It's bad. It's bad.
I do like to explore agriculture too when I'm out visiting, but sometimes I just need a break, as most people do. So hopefully there's no gators outside your office door when you go to leave later. And I just want to thank you so much again for being on my episode, or the first episode of my podcast. And it's great to, see you at least through a computer screen. And I hope that we run into each other again soon. So I just want to thank you so much, Brittany. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you for having me. I want you to know that we're real proud of you and what you're doing for our industry and getting out there and putting yourself out there. It's awesome. I wish I had the courage to do it. So keep it up. You're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you so much. That really means a lot coming from especially you, who is one person that I was absolutely so excited that you were going to be at one of the meetings where I met you. I was like, oh my gosh, Brittany Nickerson Thurlow is going to be there. I'm going to get to meet her. It's going to be so cool. So I appreciate that. We can just have to keep in touch. And one of these times when I get down to Florida, I am going to make a point to get over and visit. Or maybe you can come out, get out of the house, get away from the farm, and come out to the beach for a few days, right?
Yep, maybe. We'll see.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Val.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Please be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and leave a review. You can find me on most social media platforms at Dairy Gal Val or online at dairygalval.com. Thank you so much for coming to the Dairy Hour.